President of the Republic of Singapore, Ambassador Gopinath Pillai, Chairman, Institute of South Asian Studies, Ambassador K. Kesavapani, Director, Institute of Southeast Asian Studies, Professor Tan Tai Yong, Director, Institute of South Asian Studies, Excellencies, very distinguished guests, relatives, ladies, friends, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for coming to today's launch of the book written by my most beloved late husband, Balaji Sadasivan. I know that a good number of you have taken time off work or changed your travel plans just to be here with us today, and I'm very grateful for your presence and for your support. I would like to express my greatest appreciation to President Nathan for writing the foreword in the book and for gracing today's event. President Nathan had been in this very same ballroom just last night and is here to help us launch the book. President Nathan had also provided us with much advice and guidance and was the brainchild behind having this book launch coincide with the South Asian Diaspora Convention. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'm sure Balaji would have been extremely pleased and deeply honored by your presence at the launch of this book. I'm also very grateful to Ambassador Gopinath Pillai and Professor Tan Tai Yong for very kindly including this book launch in the South Asian Diaspora Convention. Thank you, Ambassador Pillai and Professor Tan. The title of this book, The Dancing Girl, A History of Early India, has aroused quite a lot of curiosity. The who, what, and why. Who is the dancing girl? What has she got to do with the history of India? And why would a book on the history of India be named such? The dancing girl here refers to the dancing girl of Mohenjo-daro. Mohenjo-daro and Harappa are two of the most well-known sites associated with the Indus Valley civilization that existed at least 4,500 years ago. The cities were well planned on a grid system, somewhat like Manhattan in New York. Mohenjo-daro and Harappa are now, of course, in Pakistan. The statuette of the dancing girl is made of bronze, indicating that a Bronze Age civilization existed in India at least 4,500 years ago. It is evident, therefore, that India was at a very advanced stage of civilization as long ago as that. So where is this very important artifact? Well, the dancing girl can be found in a glass showcase on the ground floor of the National Museum in New Delhi. I wouldn't be surprised if many of you have visited this museum in New Delhi, but some of you may have missed seeing the dancing girl during your visit there. That is because the dancing girl is very petite. She's only 10.8 centimeters tall, about the length of my extended thumb from the tip to the wrist. She's very small, but very important to the history of India. Hence, Balaji had decided to choose the dancing girl to start the history of India in his book. You can find her in the first paragraph and other paragraphs in the first chapter of the book. Those of you who knew Balaji would have known that he was a practicing neurosurgeon who became a politician to serve the country's needs for the last 9 years of his life. Friends, relatives, and colleagues would also have known that Balaji was a voracious reader who had a huge storehouse of information and knowledge on many diverse subjects. Colleagues who had traveled with him to various countries had told me that they were fascinated by Balaji's knowledge on Turkey, Iran, the Greek and Roman history, South American history, and history of India. Minister Datuk Dr. S. Subramaniam, Minister of Human Resources in Malaysia, who has come all the way from Malaysia to attend the book launch, and I would like to thank you, Minister, was in medical school with Balaji, and he still remembers how Balaji, as a fourth-year medical student, had written a play on the Malaccan Sultanate. This prize-winning foreign play was published 30 years ago in 1981, the year we got married. I too remember when our Asian Civilizations Museum had an exhibition on the Ottoman Empire, and we had invited him to give a talk to the museum volunteer guide. What was supposed to be a 1-hour lecture ended up as a 2.5-hour lecture. And this was despite much compression of the mountain of knowledge that he had on the subject. In fact, Balaji was a very good teacher, and it was this desire to share his knowledge that resulted in his writing this book on the history of India. This book is written in his typical eloquent and articulate style. It is informative, it is interesting, it is easy to read. It reveals his observations, his opinions, his insights about events that had occurred in India. Balaji had intended to write the history of India from ancient times to present day, and he had divided the entire history into 5 volumes. This book is a compilation of the first 2 volumes of 30 chapters and covers ancient times to the end of Mughal rule in the 17th century. Balaji did not make it to his 3rd to the 5th volume because of his untimely death in September last year. Volumes 3 to 5 were to cover India's rule under the British, India's road to independence, and post-independence India. Although he did not have time to complete the last 3 volumes, he had all the chapters figured out. He knew exactly what he wanted to write in each and every chapter of the 5 volumes. Sometime in July last year, as his colon cancer became more progressive, we considered having these 30 chapters published. Our son Dharma arranged for us to meet with his classmate in law school, Mr. Pritam Singh, who was familiar with the publishing business. By the way, this was before we had any idea that Pritam was going to join the Workers' Party. Pritam recommended us to Mrs. Trina Ong of ISIS, Institute of Southeast Asian Studies, who then brought it to the attention of Ambassador Pani, and as you've heard from Ambassador Pani earlier, he read the manuscript and decided that ISIS would publish it. So, Pritam, thank you very much for your recommendation. This book would not have materialized if not for the efforts of Ambassador Pani and his publishing team at ISIS. Ambassador Pani is a very kindly, affable, and capable director at the Institute, his gentle advice, his steering and guidance have allowed us to see this book turn into reality. Mrs. Trina Ong, managing editor and head of publishing, as well as Mr. Mark Talara, the editor, both spent countless days and nights editing the book, checking and rechecking the proofs, the maps, the images, and the captions to make sure that all is as perfect as can be. Thank you very much, Ambassador Pani, Trina, and Mark, for your very hard work. I would also like to thank Dr. Tansen Sen, who is from the Nalanda Sri Vijaya Center at ISIS, for his help in editing some sections of the manuscript. I'm also very grateful to the design company Red Windy Private Limited, headed by Ms. Ruby Lin, for all the beautiful illustrations and maps to accompany the manuscript. Ruby had remained very patient despite our many requests for changes and corrections. Along the way too, we had a lot of help from various people who shared with us their photographs or gave us copyright permission for use of their images. I would like to especially thank Dr. Ellen Chong, Dr. Gauri Krishnan, Mr. Clement On, Nalina Gopal, Denise Simple, and Solgate Khan of the Asian Civilizations Museum in Singapore, the Director General of the Archaeological Survey of India, Mr. Sajjad Ashraf and Peshawar Museum in Pakistan, Ministry of Cultural Affairs in Bangladesh, Mr. George Tan, Pushpa Mwani, and Dr. Karen Liu. I'm also extremely grateful to Professor Sugata Bose and all of Balaji's friends and colleagues who wrote endorsements for the book. It is also my great pleasure to thank our son and daughter, Dharma and Anita, for all their help in researching some of the sites in the maps and for checking the proofs. The maps proved to be rather challenging because a lot of the ancient sites no longer exist, and even when they do, may be known by a different name or have a different spelling. It was not something that we could easily do on Google Maps. I would also like to thank my sister Swanno and her husband Hugh and their daughter Rosemary and a friend Mikhail for helping to check some chapters in the manuscript. The proceeds from the sale of this book go to the Children's Cancer Foundation. I'm extremely grateful to the many donors who have donated very generously to the Children's Cancer Foundation on occasion of today's book launch. Up till last night, I was receiving phone calls and messages from people who wanted to donate. Thank you, donors, very much for your very kind generosity. Last but not least, this book launch is possible only through the combined efforts of the Institute of Southeast Asian Studies and South Asian Studies, as well as the event managers of the South Asian Diaspora Convention. Thank you, organizers, for all your very hard work. Before I leave, I would like to share with you a family video. Please do not take the title of this music video or the lyrics too seriously. We were just having fun doing the video.